Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. On the scene I want to feature this stamp right here called the Tonal Applicator Raise. I've had some questions over the years about how to use that, and I thought I'd finally get around to doing it, on a format outside of still imagery. This is a range of tones. I'm going to do the scene in a nice warm tone range, okay, featuring some yellows, reds, and oranges, maybe some pinks in there or something like that. But if you're going to work through a range of tones, I'd always recommend kind of pulling them out and making it a visual exercise in terms of taking a look at the pads you have. You can always mix and match as well. This is a distress ink right here, walnut stain, and that's kind of a brownish tone. That would fit somewhere in here in the value range. I'm not going to use all these colors, but just showing you for an example, picking out a range of tones like that. It's easier to blend this color of ochre into this color right here, because all these steps are just incrementally a little bit darker than the previous color. I mean, if I threw that brown in there in between those, that would make it for, a more gradual jump in value. And that being said, if I was going from this yellow to this brown, you can see it's a huge jump in value. So if you have some intermediate colors that you can use in there, it just makes for a more graceful blending process. All right, that's not to say that you can't just work with two colors if that's all you had, but having those intermediate colors in there, it just makes life a little bit easier, and the results come out a little bit more vibrant and deep with the end results, okay? So like I said, you can go in and mix and match your colors, or different brands, mix your brands of pads, and again, these are all dye-based pads. Okay, let's see. For the first color that I'm going to use, why don't I stamp out my imagery? And this is called terracotta. I'm going with a color that's kind of at least a medium tone, a medium value, as opposed to maybe the lightest value, which would be like a yellow in this case. I'm going to blend all these different colors over the top of it, so if I stamped out my imagery in the lightest color in the range that I'm going to be working in, by the time I brought in all these other colors over the top of it, probably wouldn't even show up. So that's why I'm starting off with something at least a medium to darker tone. Okay, this is the cloud cumulus. Change the angle, re-inking in between impressions. Okay. Putting this back into the mix. Alright. Alright, so for the first color, let's see. Let's go with a Ranger ink. This is the Antique Linen Distress ink. It's fairly slippery. It's a thicker ink than the Marvy inks. Makes for a good foundation color. Alright, now as I go in, this color is really light right now, but what it's doing is it's kind of establishing my lighting scheme that I'm going to be working in on the scene right here. I'm going to leave some of these clouds the white of the page, so that it looks like they're catching some of that light from the sun. Okay, this is the Marvy yellow. Alright. And the wetter this page becomes, the slower it grabs the color that I happen to be applying, meaning when this page starts getting a little bit wetter with each application of color, it's like I'm blending wet into wet, so it's not being absorbed into the paper quite as fast. So when I move into these darker tones, I'm going to kind of slow down in terms of the process that I'm applying these colors in. Because again, I don't want to get a big blob right in the middle of my kind of light areas. Okay, this is ochre that I'm applying. Terracotta, that same color that I stamped everything out in. Okay. Now I haven't forgotten about that Tonal Applicator Ray stamp. That's going to be coming up shortly. Okay. Brown. Okay. Dark brown. And again, this page is really quite slippery, so now if I do that type of mark, you know, like that, which I would really never do, except I'm just trying to make a point here, it doesn't stick. It spreads out really nicely for me because of the foundation of colors underneath. Okay. Alright. Now, we have this right now, and I've been applying colors on fairly smoothly. Now, if I want to, the image right here, the rays end, you know, right around the perimeter of the design. But if I want to extend those rays out a little bit farther, what I can do is I can take this stamp right here, and again it's called the Tonal Applicator Rays, and I'm going to decide what color could I stamp this out in from my range of tones that will stand up against that background. This right over here, you know, has some of this dark brown on there. If I take this Tonal Applicator Ray and stamp it out in yellow over the top of something much darker, it's not going to show up at all. So I'm trying to decide which one of these colors will it show up in. I think I'm going to have to go with the dark brown. And again, it's not a dark brown, you know, a solid shape that I'm going to be stamping it out in. You know, it's this light, airy pattern like that. So it's not as if I'm going to be stamping this out, it's going to be a solid, you know, brown shape right here. Now one of the things on here, this has this little rounded tip. I don't want to get this rounded tip right in my lightest area, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of wipe off some of that a little bit. It's lighter and drier there, and I'm going to stamp it into that light area. Okay. I'm going to do this several times, and every time I'm going to re-ink. I'm going to point that right towards the center there. And I'm going to have some more of these rays coming out towards the perimeter of my card. Okay, can you see what's kind of going on right here with those ray patterns? I hope this shows up. Some of the more subtle techniques, I'm never quite sure what the camera is picking up, so. Okay, that's that. Now, I don't stop at that. That doesn't look right to me. It looks too choppy out there, so what we're going to do is we're going to blend this in a little bit more. And, see, I'm moving towards my light like that, in this type of motion like this. See? Every time I re-ink, it's wet, and then it strokes off like that, dry, because I'm kind of going on this pendulum motion right here. Okay, so I'm not just taking it and dragging and lifting like that. Okay, and I'm always starting on the edge, because the edges of my card are going to be darker than the center, or middle area. And what you have is kind of these beams of light emanating from your light source. Okay, I have to be careful right around here because I'm real close to my light, so I'm making these real short strokes like that. Okay, now around the perimeter of this card, you really can't see very much of the cloud stamp anymore, right? Because I stamped out my cloud in that terracotta, which was kind of a reddish, brick red type of color. And I'm blending over that using the darker brown, so I can't see it as much. So what I can do is take that same dark brown and I'm going to color my cloud stamp again. Why not wipe off the side of the cloud that's going to be facing that? And I'll stamp these darker clouds on the perimeter. And I can get that cloud formation showing there. So I'm using my range of colors, my range of values, in the imagery itself, okay? And that can create depth, just like I did in that other video when I stamped my trees lighter to represent something farther off in the distance, okay? I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to go for a second impression right there of that brown. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a lighter brown. Okay. Wipe off that border right there. And let's go for another one down here, maybe. So it looks like we have a little bit more of a deeper space there with that. Okay, and there you have it with that sun kind of peeking out from the clouds, really illuminating the area. And if you want to, I mean, you can stamp some imagery in there. Don't go with anything too light. You have to go with something fairly bold. Here's this spruce tree. Let's try something. Let's take the spruce, and where the top of that tree is, let's wipe off some of that. Maybe it'll be a little bit lighter on the top of the tree where it's kind of facing the light, the sun. Yeah. Okay, now if I stamp a tree to this side of the sun, let's wipe off some of that side of the tree there, like it's capturing some of that light. Okay. I don't know, maybe this tree down here is going to be more in the shade. Okay, something like that. And I don't know, like in the previous video I was talking about, sometimes the darkest colors, the darkest imagery color, I like to finish off with that same color on the edges of my card to kind of frame it off. And there you have the Tonal Applicator rays stamp. These rays of light shining out like that. And let's see, a finishing touch of some birds right up in here, flying up towards the light. Okay, Tonal Applicator rays, darkening of some shapes around the perimeter in the form of clouds. So if you ever, you know, totally wipe out in terms of visually what you've already stamped out, especially in the sky, you can just re-stamp it in a darker color right over the tops of the inks that you've laid down. Okay? Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.